I say, how are you doing today? How are you doing today? I am your host, Lacey G. Soldier Turner, and I have a very special guest with me. We got the wonderful, amazing, talented Julius B. Anthony. Welcome to the platform.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Great to be here this morning.
Okay, no problem. So before I get into what I want to get into, I want the people to learn a little bit about you. So can you tell me where were you born and raised, and how was your upbringing as a child?
Okay. Born and raised in the Loop, which is St. Louis, and a community that's commonly known as the JVL. So that's the Jeff Vanderloo community, which is the closest, I guess, residential area to downtown St. Louis. It's in North City. Traditionally, that was the neighborhood that most Blacks during the Great Black Migration settled in when they first arrived in St. Louis. St. Louis was considered a destination city during the Great Black Migration. So when Blacks left the Jim Crow South from Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Arkansas, and when they traveled to St. Louis through Union Station off of the train, most of them were settled in Jeff Vanderloo, quite frankly. And that's where my parents settled in the mid-40s. They came here as a young couple, and they had a whole bunch of children. They had 8 kids. Started off with 4 as a young, vibrant couple, and they waited a few more years and had 1 kid all by himself. Then they waited a few more years, and then they had three kids. We call the last 3 of us, we call us the menopause babies, because my parents were old when they had the last 3 of us. And I'm child number 7, so I'm considered the knee baby.
Okay.
And so grew up here in St. Louis and Jeff Vanderloo. Jeff Vanderloo is always considered a neighborhood where really the majority of the people lived below the poverty line, or what would be considered the poverty line, or right at the poverty line, or right above it, which would be considered the working poor. And so my dad was a Baptist minister, and but for his full-time job, he worked as a maintenance worker at Central Hardware, and that's how he took care of his family. And my mother was a school teacher, and they took care of their family. We always lived in subsidized housing. That was something they decided to do as a couple in a family unit, because they wanted to make sure that all 8 of their children attended college. And so they made the decision not to own a home, so that the extra money they would have, they would use that money to send their children to college to get a college degree, because they believed that education was the pathway for their family and the generations after them to have a better life. And so all 8 of us went to college, and all of us have a college degree. And so in St. Louis, of course, you're known by what high school you went to. So I had the pleasure of attending Metro High School, which still to this day ranks as the top high school in the state of Missouri, the top high school in the metropolitan St. Louis, and is listed as one of the top 100 public high schools in the United States of America, according to U.S. News and World Report. So, I wear that with a real badge. Okay. To have attended that high school, and to know that that is a high school right here in St. Louis, Missouri. Okay. So went to high school, went to Howard University, which is the top historically Black college and university. So I'm proud of that. And then went to graduate school at Clark Atlanta University. Spent my career in education, and have lived in Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Georgia, upstate New York as an assistant superintendent, and now I'm back in St. Louis, and here we are.
All right. So everything you said was great, except you should have went to Sumner High School. High school.
I'm not a bulldog.
You got that.
No, unfortunately, And so, but you know what? I'm gonna just tell this quick story because I know you got probably a lot of questions.
Go ahead, go ahead, go
But
ahead.
when I went to the nerd high school, Metro, we just gonna say that. And I worked at McDonald's, the McDonald's on Kings Highway and Natural Bridge. Woo-hoo! And actually, it was just me and a couple of other my friends from Metro that worked at that McDonald's. You know, the White Castles was right across the street. And
Mhm.
we worked at that McDonald's because we felt like we were in school with all the other regular high school kids from around the city. And so whenever the big football games like Sumner games, Beaumont games, everybody had their big games, they would come to the McDonald's on Kings Highway and Natural Bridge. So I felt like I was a Sumner student and a Beaumont student. So I'm a claim I'm half Sumner then.
Right here, honorary bulldog.
I'm
Right
an honorary bulldog because I was at McDonald's. So there
here.
you go.
Okay. So let me ask you this, Jules. So for people who have never been to St. Louis, because they hear about the murders and all, they think we like
Yeah.
the most crazy and dangerous city. What can you tell people who might want to visit St. Louis but are scared to visit?
I would say that St. Louis, there are a lot of bright lights in St. Louis. St. Louis is a place of real light and possibility and a place of opportunity. I will say this: St. Louis is known for right now. It is the fastest growing place, or one of the fastest growing place for entrepreneurship,
Facts.
small businesses, nonprofits, and particularly for entrepreneurs of color. There are so many young people of color who are starting their own businesses here in St. Louis, and that's a huge thing
Facts.
and a very positive thing in St. Louis. St. Louis is also a place where we can boast of a lot of great things, like our Powell Symphony Hall, one of the greatest symphonies in this country. We
Yeah.
can boast of still one of the greatest zoos in
Mhm.
this nation, as well as many other things.
Don't let us get on Cardinal Nation.
And there you go. And all the sports teams actually from St. Louis. So we have a lot to boast about. We have Washington University, which is one of the top 10 universities in the Midwest that's here. We have one of the largest health complexes here in terms of hospitals and some of the things that they specialize in terms of optometry and cancer centers and children's health right here in St. Louis. So there's a lot of things that St. Louis can say that they're great that we can boast about. So it's not all about the murders. There's a lot of things that St. Louis can say that there are good, bright spots, light spots here in St. Louis.
Yeah, you see that? So y'all ain't gotta be scared. You see, Julius just dropped all the knowledge on y'all. So come on.
Absolutely. And then we got the Believe Project, and I'm sure we'll talk
Oh
about
yeah, we're
that
gonna
in a
talk
few
about
minutes.
that too. Yeah. I already got you. You already know. So, moving on to kind of this. You are the founder and the president of the St. Louis Black Authors of Children's Literature. Can you tell the people about that program?
Sure. St. Louis Black Authors of Children's Literature was my response to um, my experience working in primarily Black communities and in education that in education arenas that serve Black children, and not just Black children that live in poverty, but Black children that also come from middle income families as well as upper income families. So I've had the privilege of working in public education as well as private schools. As a matter of fact, I'm the founding principal of a school here that's called City Academy. And City Academy is a school that's part of the Independent Schools Association, which is a network of private schools that are primarily your private schools that cost anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000 a year per student. And these are kids that are in school from kindergarten through 12th grade. So they're really your upper crust kind of kids. And so I've been fortunate to be part of both settings and to work with Black kids in both settings. And what I've noticed about Black children in both of those settings, both public schools and private schools, is that Black children struggle, one, with just school, period.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing that I noticed is that Black children struggle with reading and literacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so St. Louis Black Authors of Children's Literature was my response to that. And we struggle in this way. One, there is a lack of an opportunity for Black children to connect to the literacy experiences that are presented to them in school. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is there is a lack of text that is reflective of the Black experience that's presented in school. As a matter of fact, the International Literacy Association suggests that less than 6% of all the texts that children are presented to in American schools, K-12, tell the experiences of Black, Latinx, and Indigenous people. Less than 6%.
That's crazy.
And I dare say that if you do a deep dive, particularly in places where Black children are being schooled, it's less than 3%.
I bet you. Yep.
And if there is any information, any books, art text that is reflective of the Black experience, it's probably books that were written back in 1960 and 1970.
Facts.
It's not even current stuff. And so that's a problem.
Facts.
Because what happens when children don't see themselves in the learning process, they become numb to the experience, essentially.
Yeah.
What messages that sends to children is that they aren't valued in the learning process. In metropolitan St. Louis, less than, well, this is what we know. In metropolitan St. Louis, from 2014 to 2019, 75% of all Black third graders failed in reading.
Crazy.
Yet, the research suggests that if you're not on or above grade level in reading by the end of third grade, you're less successful in school.
Mm.
And you have a higher potential of dropping out of school in 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade.
Hey, Julie, let me ask you this. So, with you saying that, so how important is early literacy?
Early literacy is critical. And when we say early literacy, this is what we mean. We mean the socialization of literacy, or the process of taking on literacy skills from 0 through third grade. So that's about 8 or 9 years old. That's early literacy. That's how we look at early literacy in our American educational system. And so from 0 to kindergarten, there are certain things that we are supposed to do to get children, what we say, ready for kindergarten, or literacy ready for kindergarten. And then in kindergarten through third grade, we're supposed to take children through an explicit literacy process for learning how to read. And what we mean by that is there are specific skills that kids are supposed to learn around, like phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, comprehension, and fluency. So there are specific sort of like strategies and lessons they're supposed to get. So they're solid readers by the end of third grade. And not just readers, there's other things that they're supposed to gain. Writing skills, speaking skills, listening skills. And then in fourth grade, the expectation is that you're supposed to read to learn. So there's no more explicit instruction in fourth grade. So if you can't pick up a book and read it and understand it in fourth grade, then you're out of luck. So if 75% of Black kids in metropolitan St. Louis failed in reading in 2019, what do you think happened to them in 2020 when COVID came around?
Yeah, man.
If the research says if you're not on grade level at the end of third grade, then you have a high potential to drop out or not even do well in school. And there's a direct link from that to your ability to do well as an adult. That's huge.
Facts, real talk.
And in 2020, 86% of Black third graders failed in reading. Now, just know this, in education, the first thing they tell us that literacy is the basis of all learning, period. Meaning that you can't fully learn math without literacy, science, social studies, anything. And really, you can't really navigate life well without literacy. So here you have this city called St. Louis, where you have 86% of third graders that can't read. Those third graders are going to eventually become adults. And the research says that they're going to grow up to be adults that can't navigate adult life. Do you think that happens for just that generation alone? No. Here's another fact. 90% of all Black children in St. Louis live in a community that's called a promise zone community. Do you know what a promise zone community is?
Lightness, Julius.
A promise zone community is a community where a significant number of the citizens live below the poverty line or at the poverty line. 90% of Black children in St. Louis. So if 90% of the children are living in those communities, who else are living in those communities? Adults.
Their parents.
They can't right, because they ain't living there by themselves.
Exactly, their parents.
Thank you. And their parents probably went to where? The same schools the children went to.
Exactly.
So it's a vicious cycle, is it not?
Cycle repeats.
Thank you. So who's the problem, the kid or the system?
The system.
All right, there you go. Now, that's where we are. So we got to do something about the way the system is schooling our people.
So you think the lack of ability, you think that falls squarely on the system's shoulders, right?
I do. I do. I do not buy into this notion that it's the parents' fault, it's the family's fault. Yes, poverty is a layer that helps to make this issue a more complex issue and a more nuanced issue. But poverty is a result of your ability not being able to navigate life well. And if the core of that is your ability not to get what you need out of school and be literate, it's like, which comes first, the horse or the wagon? That part.
Yeah.
So, let's start with the system and the way we're being schooled. Perhaps that's the answer. And you can't keep doing the same thing thinking you're going to get a different result.
Right. That's insane.
It's insanity.
Facts.
So, when are we going to have the willingness to do something different?
Definitely. So you already doing something different. I want to talk. So can you tell the people about the Believe project and what are you doing to implement things to get children to read?
Sure. So our strategy to begin to consider how we must look at this system of schooling for Black children and Black people differently is called the Believe Project. And it's simply a process of immersing Black children in a culturally responsive literacy program so that they can do three things. And we call this process the intimacy of literacy. We want them to gain interest, confidence, and joy around the process of learning how to read. We believe in the science of reading. We think that every child does need instruction in phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. But that's not all. The approach toward children becoming fully literate is not just a cognitive approach, it must be an affective approach. And they must become synergistic, they must intersect, meaning that the strategies around teaching phonemic awareness must be culturally responsive. The strategies around fluency must be culturally responsive. And so interest is a humanistic thing. No human wants to do anything that they don't have interest in.
Facts.
Period. And interest is simply this: it must have some kind of cultural connection, something that connects me to the experience, something that makes me want to do it. And so that's important. Confidence is an experience that builds self-identity, self-awareness, self-love, and opportunities to understand how we love each other. And then joy is this pursuit, this feeling toward a pursuit of happiness and experience. And without it, then there's no success around the optimal end. And so there's no getting to really being a successful reader unless the experience and the journey toward getting there is a joyful one. And so you must pursue joy in the process of becoming a reader. And so how do we do all these things? We build what are called literacy labs. And at the core of these spaces of these labs, we put 1,000 books. We start off with 1,000. We commit ourselves to these labs for at least 3 years. And every year we add 1,000 books. So by the end of our 3 years, there are 3,000 books in that space. We primarily work with schools that serve Black children. So every book in that space, the protagonists in those books are Black people. So we don't put books in those spaces that where the protagonists are animals or inanimate objects. We don't do that. Black children need to see Black people.
Right, I agree.
And they need to know that Black people are heroes in the story, so that they can connect themselves as heroes in a story. That's important. The other thing that we do in these spaces is that we put beautiful Black art all around the walls in these spaces. So there's one full wall that has a mural. And in that mural, we put life-size characters of children. And we show Black children in their diversity in terms of skin tone, hairstyle, dress. And we also put aspirational words in those murals, like the word believe and other aspirational words like aspire, create, innovate, love, all of those kinds of words. And we do an art exhibit, a fine art exhibit. We call it Black Windows, where we work with local artists and we ask them to create art pieces that reflect the word believe, so that when children see them, that they can see through those pieces as if they are windows and can see what it is like to believe through the lens of Blackness. So those are in those spaces. Then we put playtime paths. And on those playtime pads are ebooks, literacy games, and music, because all of those are pathways, literacy pathways, and opportunities for children to gain skills in literacy. In addition, we work with local authors and we bring them to those spaces where they introduce their books to the children. And all the children get free copies of their books and they're autographed. We
Nice.
will bring in national New York Times best-selling authors to our students. Our believers is what we call our students. And they get copies of their books and they're autographed. And let me tell you about just that experience. It's powerful
Okay.
because we tell children that the most powerful thing in a classroom setting is the book,
Right.
because the book holds all the knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Everything you're supposed to learn is where?
In the book.
In the book,
Hmm.
which means that the person that wrote the book then is who?
The person giving the knowledge, the author. Hmm.
The author is God,
Yes.
because the author has all the knowledge. They put all the knowledge in the book.
Facts.
So they're God.
Mm.
Now just imagine if God looked like you
Mm.
and you had a chance to meet God.
Yes.
You had a chance to meet the author, the writer of the book, the person who put the knowledge in the book. Wouldn't that open the possibility that you too could one day be God?
Yes, definitely.
Okay,
They get to see it in a physical form.
there you go. And so we make sure that children get that opportunity so they too can aspire to that possibility. Same thing with the art. We bring in those local artists so that children will know if you have that gifting. And a lot of children show that gifting early in terms of their creativity and drawing. Even the girls and how they want to do hair and makeup. All of that is art,
Right.
visual art. And our artists are able to help them to understand how they can show that visually. And they get to meet those people. And we always attach some piece of picture book or some piece of literature to those experiences. All of our children get to see a piece of live theater every year. And we attach a book to that. And all of our kids get a copy of that book. We do this because we're trying to close the book desert in the neighborhoods that they're a part of. All of our children, if they're living in a promise zone, they're living in what is considered a book desert.
Mm.
Because in the promise zone communities in St. Louis, there are no bookstores.
Gotcha.
There are a few libraries. And in some of those communities, there are none.
Facts.
And in most of the public schools in those communities, they do not have operational libraries.
Mhm.
And the libraries they do have, the books are old. And so we're giving them current books. And all the books in our spaces, we don't put a book in our space that's older than 5 or 6 years.
Mm.
All of the books are current published books.
Mm.
And so they get all of these wonderful experiences with a hope that some experience just one book, because it only takes one book to hook a kid in.
Yeah, definitely.
And that process will get them to reading. We work with teachers to help them to understand the importance of Black children's literature and what it means to help kids gain their own agency around learning. We hook them into other kinds of training so that they will know what it means for children to build their own self-agency around learning, because we also think that children are overly controlled in
Mm.
school settings, and that too often teachers do not understand the constructivist learning model for
Facts.
children and how children naturally learn on their own. So we do a lot of work around that as well.
Facts. Okay. So let me ask you this. I saw somewhere where you were an advocate for the Good Shepherd Academy for boys in North St.
Yes.
Can you tell the people about that and how important that is?
Absolutely. So Cortega Collins, wonderful, wonderful young lady who is the founder of the Good Shepherd Early Childhood Center and the 24/1 footprint in St. Louis, has had her own sort of challenging experience with her sons, and wanted to, and she has this vision, this dream, this desire to start an early childhood center that only focuses on the early development of young boys. And this is why she understands how important, one, that early childhood education is. She understands the importance of foundational development for young children and how important that foundational development is for kindergarten readiness. And when children are ready for kindergarten, it gives them a better chance of doing well between kindergarten and third grade. We know what the research says in the preschool years, that when they go to school in kinder and they're ready for the school age experience, then they have a better opportunity. Now, this is one of the things that makes them more ready. Their bank of vocabulary.
Mm.
For many children that are living in homes of poverty, their bank of vocabulary is low. And it's typically low because the adults in their environment have a low bank of vocabulary. Your bank of vocabulary is typically higher when you've had a postgraduate, that means a college graduate experience,
Mm.
or if you're really well read, because you're using larger words and you're using a multitude of words to express the way that you think and you feel.
Mhm.
And you're using those words around your children. And so your children will naturally pick them up because our language is socialized first in the home.
Okay.
And when you bring those language, when you have those words and those languages are picked up in the home, then those words, that vocabulary becomes a natural part of who you are. So
Right.
by the time you get to kindergarten and the kindergarten teacher are reading you these stories and they say, what do you think will happen next? You're able to easily articulate your thoughts and your feelings about what will happen next because you have the vocabulary to do it. But if you're growing up in a home where the vocabulary bank is low and people don't necessarily clearly articulate their thoughts, or they don't speak in complete sentences, then you aren't as ready
Mhm.
for the kindergarten and the literacy experience. And here is what we know about Black boys. According to the National Education Assessment Progress, this is an assessment that's nationally given to kids across the country. And if we look at our state's assessment, Black boys score lower in reading than every other gender and racial group.
That's crazy.
Let that just sit with you for a moment. Every gender and racial group. How many racial groups are out there?
A
And you
lot.
don't even have to answer, just think about them.
A lot.
All of them.
A lot.
Black boys are at the bottom,
That's crazy. See, we got to
the
do better.
very bottom.
If we knew better, we do better.
Okay. And so to give Black boys a targeted early childhood experience where they're able to build what we call early literacy skills. The other thing that's important in these early years before they get to kinder, The basis of all literacy is sound. That is what our language and words are built upon. When you're growing up in homes of poverty, sometimes the sounds we hear aren't the sounds that we're expected to learn in school. So we may hear a word a certain way at home, we're socialized into it, and St. Louis is good about it. Car, Eric, Gerald. But at school, it's car. You get where I'm going?
I got you. Yeah.
But if you go to kindergarten and you don't have those sounds already regulated, it may take you to second grade to get those sounds because you're hearing those sounds all the time at home differently.
Facts.
And so this is a conundrum. So that's why early childhood experiences, and there are so many kids that don't get it. They don't have those high quality early childhood experiences. And that's why this all boys early childhood program is important. It gives Black boys in St. Louis a targeted sense of hope. That's all.
Okay. So let me ask you this. So on your journey with this, what would you say has been your greatest challenge?
I was going to really say it, but
Say it. Go ahead and say it. Let it be known. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't keep it real.
Lance, you're going to get me in trouble.
They need to hurt the people.
Oh, my greatest joke, I'm going to say it in a nice way, internalized racism. That's my greatest challenge. Black folks, internalized racism.
Woo.
That's my greatest challenge.
Man. Okay.
I'm gonna put it like this. There's this wonderful, wonderful Black anthropologist, educator, theorist. His name was Dr. Asa Hilliard III. And he had this theory called the sheepdog complex. I'm going to share the sheepdog complex with you.
Okay.
So Dr. Hilliard said that Black folks suffer from the sheepdog complex. He said when the shepherd trains the sheepdog, a sheepdog, he takes the sheepdog when it's first born from the mother sheepdog as a pup. And he puts the pup sheepdog in the kennel with the mother sheep and all of her new baby sheep.
Okay.
And so the sheepdog, the pup sheepdog, suckle off of the mother sheep just like all of the other sheep, baby sheep. And the sheepdog grows up with the other baby sheep, and the mama sheep treat the sheepdog just like the sheep pup, just like it's one of hers. And so the sheepdog begins to think that he a sheep, just like all the other sheep. So when the sheepdog grows up and becomes a full-grown sheepdog, he attacks anything that doesn't look like the sheep because he's trying to protect everything that looks like himself. So when all the other dogs and foxes or anything that comes after the sheep, he attacks it, even if it looks like him. And he said, that's how Black people are. We got the sheepdog complex because we think we something else, something other than who we are. He said that is what internalized racism is. We have this complex that anything that looks like us, genuinely looks like us, is about us, for us, our first inclination is to attack it.
Crazy.
because in our minds, it's not good enough. We want it to look like something else.
Preach.
We want it to look like the sheep.
Hey, look, you just dropped that knowledge on us too. So stop acting like the sheepdog.
I'm being a sheepdog. That's what Dr. And the whole crowd would just go up. You have to hear him. He's deceased now. But Asa Hilliard would do that thing. And that's been my greatest challenge.
Okay.
That's
So
been my greatest challenge, trying to get us to understand the importance of cultural relevancy and that stop attacking Black children. They're not the problem.
facts.
Stop attacking Black parents. They're not the problem.
Facts.
Check out the system.
Attack the system.
When will we have the willingness to change the way we are schooling our children? When will we love them enough? When will we see the humanity in our children enough to want to change the way that they're being treated in these places we call school? I'll stop.
All right, look, hey, you just, hey, I'll just, hey, drop the mic. So, do you have anything coming up that you want to promote or that you want the people to check out?
We have a great year ahead of us with the Believe Project and St. Louis Black Authors of Children's Literature. So this year, for the first time, we are opening a retail space. So I mentioned earlier, there isn't any bookstores in the Promise Zone footprint. And there is this space in Old North called House of Vision. It's actually operated by another nonprofit called Dream Builders. Mike Woods, great project, great program. Mike is a great guy. He's the founder, he and Neil Richards actually. And basically their project is all about working with young people to rehab homes and to flip them and to offer them to low-income people in those communities and to the homeless. Someone had donated this building to them. They rehabbed it, and they have begun to work with local fashion designers. And so fashion designers have begun to put their clothing in those stores. They bought this t-shirt maker, embroidery maker for the kids, and now the kids are actually doing that, creating their own t-shirts out of the store. And they've invited us to actually have a retail spot in their store. So we're going to be launching that in November, where we'll be selling our local authors' books, but we'll also be selling t-shirts with our artwork on it, as well as note cards with our artwork on it. And for us, this is really an opportunity for us to begin to change the consciousness around Black literacy in our community. That's what it's all about. And doing it in the same kind of way, sort of like what hip hop did for our community and changing the consciousness around Black unity, Black brotherhood. Because we do it differently. We do it through fashion, we do it through art, we do it through music. And we want to do the same thing as it relates to the importance of literacy. And so we're going to begin that process in November. So that's coming up. We're also bringing to St. Louis a New York Times bestselling author, Jason Reynolds, who is the top Black author for young adult literature. He is releasing his first children's picture book, which is an homage to Langston Hughes. And I am so proud to announce and to share that St. Louis Black Authors and the Believe Project and Noble Neighbor is bringing him to the Lou on October 5th. This is a big, 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 big deal. It doesn't get bigger than Jason Reynolds. He is a Black male author who is a New York Times bestselling author. So he will be here. All of our believers will get an opportunity to see him. We're working on securing a large enough venue because we have 3,000 kids that we're trying to pack into one place to get to see Jason Reynolds. So we're working on that now, but we have the date, which is October 5th. So that's coming up. And by the end of this school year, we would have opened 3 more Believe labs. So we will be up to Believe 13 by the end of this school year. So we're really excited about that as well.
Nice. So, how can the people get in contact with you or be a part of these Believe projects?
You can contact us through our website, stlblackauthors.com. You can get us on Facebook at St. Louis Black Authors. And you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, Julius B. Anthony. And we're also on Instagram at STL Black Author.
Okay. Before we get out of here, Julius, I got a question that I always like to ask my guests. When it is all said and done and you are long gone from this earth, what is it that you want the people to know about Julius B. Anthony?
That he loved Black people and he always saw the humanity in children. That's what I want them to know. That he loved Black people and he always saw the humanity in children.
Well, I like that. Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the platform. If you ever need us, you already know we here. We'll promote you and everything. I love the thing that you are doing for the kids because we need more people like that. Period. So I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Okay, and I will be in touch. I'll let you know when the article dropped too.
All right. Thank you. I
All
appreciate
right.
you.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.